The soft glow of a winter morning bathed Central Park in pale sunlight as a light frost clung to the grass and trees. The usual chatter of joggers and dog walkers filled the air, mingling with the crisp sound of leaves crunching underfoot. The park, though lively, still offered a sense of calm, a sanctuary in the heart of bustling New York City. Barron Trump walked along one of the park's winding paths, his hands tucked into the pockets of his dark overcoat. He had come to the park for some fresh air and solitude, away from the endless buzz of city life. At 18, he was accustomed to the public eye but valued these quiet moments of normalcy. As he strolled, he couldn't help but notice how the cold morning had added a touch of magic to the park, with a light mist hovering over the lake and the trees glistening under the frost. He was lost in thought when a faint, high-pitched sound reached his ears. He stopped and tilted his head, listening closely. It was faint but unmistakable, a whimper, a dog's whimper. Frowning, Barron scanned the area but saw nothing unusual. The sound came again, more desperate this time, and his heart quickened. He followed the noise off the main path, venturing into a quieter, more wooded area of the park. The whimper grew louder, guiding him closer. Finally, tucked behind a dense patch of bushes, he spotted the source of the sound, a small, scruffy puppy trembling in the cold. Its fur was matted with dirt, and its tiny body shook as it whimpered softly. A thin red collar hung loosely around its neck, but there was no sign of an owner nearby. The puppy's big, pleading eyes met Barron's, and it let out another helpless whine. Barron knelt down, his heart breaking at the sight. "Hey there, little guy," he said gently, extending a hand. The puppy flinched at first, but as Barron's calm voice reassured it, the tiny dog slowly crept closer. Its nose brushed his hand, and Barron felt the icy chill of its fur. "You're freezing," Barron murmured, carefully scooping the puppy into his arms. The little dog didn't resist, instead nestling into the warmth of Barron's coat. "Where's your owner, huh? How'd you end up out here all alone?" Barron looked around, hoping to spot someone searching for a lost pet, but the area was deserted. He noticed a small tear in the puppy's collar, suggesting it might have broken free from its leash. His mind raced with possibilities, but one thing was clear. The puppy needed help, and it needed it now. With the dog cradled securely in his arms, Barron made his way back to the main path. Along the way, he stopped a few joggers and dog walkers, asking if they had seen anyone searching for a lost puppy. Each shook their head, offering sympathetic glances but no useful information. Determined to help, Barron decided to take the puppy to the nearby animal shelter he remembered passing on his way to the park. As he walked, the puppy's shivering subsided, and it nuzzled closer to him, its trust in him growing with each step. The shelter, a modest but welcoming building, was run by a local nonprofit organization. Inside, the staff were busy tending to various animals. But when Barron entered with the puppy in his arms, all activities seemed to pause. A young woman at the front desk, her name tag reading Sophia, looked up with wide eyes. "Is that a stray?" she asked, hurrying around the desk to meet him. "I think so," Barron replied. "I found him in the park, alone and shivering. I couldn't leave him there." Sophia gently took the puppy from Barron, her face softening as she examined it. "Poor thing," she said. "He looks like he's been out there for a while. You did the right thing bringing him here." "What happens now?" Barron asked. "Well, we'll check for a microchip to see if he has an owner," Sophia explained. "If not, we'll take care of him here until he's ready for adoption." As Sophia disappeared into the back room with the puppy, Barron felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. He was glad the dog was safe, but the thought of it being abandoned or lost weighed heavily on his mind. A few minutes later, Sophia returned. "No microchip," she said, shaking her head. "But don't worry. We'll make sure he's well taken care of." Barron hesitated, a thought forming in his mind. What if I take care of him?" Sophia blinked, surprised. "You mean foster him?" Barron nodded. "At least until we can find his owner. I don't want him to feel alone. Sophia smiled. That's really kind of you. Let me get you the paperwork. Barron filled out the paperwork at the shelter, his mind already racing with thoughts of how he could care for the little puppy. He wasn't sure how his family would react to his decision, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the tiny dog had crossed his path for a reason. Sophia handed him a small starter pack, some food, a leash, and a cozy blanket, and thanked him for stepping up to foster the puppy. As Barron carried the puppy home, he noticed the little dog seemed calmer, its trust in him growing. The once nervous whimpering had stopped, and the puppy occasionally looked up at him with its big, soulful eyes as if it knew it was finally safe. When he walked into his family's home, the warm air hit him, and the puppy let out a tiny sneeze, prompting a chuckle from Barron. Melania, his mother, was the first to notice. "Barron, what's that in your arms?" she asked, her tone curious but not unkind. "A puppy," Barron replied simply, holding the small dog up for her to see. "I found him in the park. He was freezing and all alone." Melania's expression softened immediately. She reached out to gently pet the puppy, her maternal instincts kicking in. "Poor thing," she murmured. "He's adorable. But where's his owners?" "I don't know," Barron admitted. "I took him to a shelter, and they couldn't find a microchip. I'm fostering him until we figure something out." Melania smiled, her approval clear. "That's very kind of you, Barron. But taking care of a puppy is a big responsibility." "I know," Barron said. "I'm ready for it." Over the next few days, Barron threw himself into caring for the puppy, whom he had named Lucky. The name felt appropriate, both for the dog's newfound chance at life and for how lucky Barron felt to have met him. He set up a cozy corner in his room with a blanket and food from the shelter and made sure Lucky had everything he needed. Lucky quickly adapted to his new environment. He followed Barron everywhere, his little tail wagging enthusiastically. When Barron sat at his desk to study or read, Lucky would curl up at his feet, content just to be near him. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, and Barron began to wonder if he would be able to let Lucky go when the time came. Meanwhile, the story of Barron and Lucky began to spread. Unbeknownst to Barron, someone at the shelter had shared the story of the young man who had rescued a lost puppy on Christmas morning. The post, accompanied by a photo of Barron holding Lucky at the shelter, quickly went viral. Social media was flooded with comments praising Barron's kindness. This is what the world needs more of: compassion and action. Barron Trump just reminded us all that even the smallest acts of kindness can change a life. Lucky truly is lucky to have been found by someone with such a big heart. Barron tried to ignore the attention, focusing instead on giving Lucky the best care possible. But the story's reach had unexpected consequences. One evening, the shelter called Barron with surprising news. "Barron," Sophia said on the phone, her voice excited, "we think we might have found Lucky's owner." Barron's heart sank and lifted at the same time. "Really?" he asked, struggling to keep his emotions in check. "Yes," Sophia said. "A woman came into the shelter earlier today. She lost her puppy about 2 weeks ago and described Lucky perfectly, right down to the tear in his collar. We showed her the photo of you and Lucky, and she burst into tears. She'd love to meet you and Lucky tomorrow. If you're willing." Barron hesitated, glancing down at Lucky, who was snoozing peacefully at his feet. The thought of parting with the little dog tugged at his heart, but he knew this was the right thing to do. "Of course," he said. "Set it up." The next day, Barron arrived at the shelter with Lucky in tow. The puppy seemed excited, wagging his tail and sniffing the air as if sensing something important was about to happen. Inside, Sophia greeted Barron warmly and introduced him to a woman named Clara, who appeared to be in her early 30s. Her eyes lit up when she saw Lucky. "Lucky," she called softly, kneeling down. The puppy froze for a moment, tilting his head as if recognizing her voice. Then, with a joyful bark, he wriggled out of Barron's arms and bounded toward her. Tears streamed down Clara's face as she scooped Lucky into her arms. "I thought I'd lost you forever," she whispered, hugging him tightly. Barron watched the reunion, his heart swelling with a bittersweet mix of emotions. Seeing Lucky so happy made him realize that this was where the little dog belonged. "Thank you," Clara said, looking up at Barron with gratitude. "You saved him. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to repay me," Barron said, smiling. "I'm just glad he's back where he belongs." As Clara prepared to leave with Lucky, she paused. "If you ever want to visit him, you're always welcome," she offered. "You're part of his story now." Barron nodded. "Thank you. Take good care of him." As Clara and Lucky walked out of the shelter, Barron felt a pang of loss, but also an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. He had given Lucky a second chance and reunited him with his family. It was a reminder of how small actions could lead to incredible outcomes. The story didn't end there. The viral post about Barron's rescue of Lucky had inspired countless others to visit shelters, adopt pets, and support animal welfare organizations. Donations poured into the shelter where Barron had taken Lucky, allowing them to expand their services and help even more animals in need. Barron himself continued to support the shelter, often visiting to volunteer and spend time with the animals. The experience with Lucky had sparked something in him, a deeper understanding of compassion and the power of small, selfless acts. Weeks later, Barron received a letter in the mail. It was from Clara, and inside was a photo of Lucky, now healthy and happy, playing in a sunny backyard. The note read, "Thank you for bringing Lucky back to us. He's a part of our family again, and we'll never forget what you did for him." Barron smiled as he placed the photo on his desk, a reminder of the bond he had shared with Lucky and the ripple effect of kindness. In his heart, he knew this wasn't the last time he would act on his compassion. There were always more lives to touch, more stories to create, and more chances to make the world just a little brighter, one small act at a time. A few weeks had passed since Barron reunited Lucky with his family, but the experience stayed fresh in his mind. He often thought about the little puppy who had found his way into his life, even if only for a short time. It wasn't just the act of rescuing Lucky that had left a mark. It was the overwhelming realization of how small gestures of kindness could ripple outward and inspire so many others. The shelter where Barron had taken Lucky saw a surge in support following the story's viral spread. Donations from across the country poured in, allowing them to upgrade their facilities and help even more animals in need. Adoption rates skyrocketed, with families coming in daily to give homeless pets a second chance. Sophia, the shelter worker, sent Barron updates on the shelter's progress, each message filled with gratitude and hope. One afternoon, Barron decided to visit the shelter again. This time, he wasn't there to foster another dog. He was there to volunteer. Dressed in a simple sweatshirt and jeans, he spent hours walking the dogs, cleaning enclosures, and assisting with paperwork. The staff welcomed him warmly, and even the animals seemed to sense his gentle spirit. As he worked, Sophia approached him with a smile. "You know, you've made a bigger impact here than you realize," she said, handing him a folder. Inside were photos of some of the animals who had been adopted in the weeks since Lucky's story went viral. "These animals have homes now because of you. People were inspired by your kindness, and it's made a world of difference." Barron flipped through the photos, his heart swelling as he saw the happy faces of the dogs and cats in their new homes. "It wasn't just me," he said. "It was everyone who decided to step up. I just started something small." Sophia nodded. Sometimes that's all it takes. One small act can change everything. Later that week, Barron received another surprise, a visit from Clara and Lucky. They arrived unannounced at the shelter, Lucky bounding in on his leash with excitement. When Lucky saw Barron, his tail wagged furiously, and he lunged forward to greet him, jumping into his arms as if no time had passed. Clara laughed. "I think he remembers you." Barron grinned, scratching Lucky behind the ears. "How could I forget him?" Clara handed Barron a small wrapped box. "We wanted to thank you properly," she said. Inside the box was a framed photo of Lucky sitting in their backyard, looking happier than ever. Alongside it was a small plaque engraved with the words, "To Barron, with gratitude for saving Lucky and inspiring us all." Barron was touched beyond words. "You didn't have to do this," he said, his voice soft. "We wanted to," Clara replied, "because what you did wasn't just about Lucky. You reminded us and so many others that kindness still exists." As Clara and Lucky left, Barron stood outside the shelter, holding the framed photo in his hands. He looked up at the sky, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. He hadn't set out to make a difference on that cold morning in the park. He had only wanted to help one puppy. But that small act had grown into something much larger, touching lives and inspiring people far beyond what he had imagined. For Barron, the lesson was clear. Change didn't always come through grand gestures or sweeping movements. Sometimes, it started with a single moment of compassion, a moment that could spark hope, heal wounds, and remind the world that even in the smallest acts, there is power to transform lives. And as he walked away from the shelter that day, Barron knew this was just the beginning of his journey to make the world a kinder place.